All right, get ready, because today we're going deep into the world of animal behavior with a true pioneer, Nikolaas Niko Tinbergen.
Oh, Tinbergen. A fascinating figure.
You bet. You sent over some excerpts from his Wikipedia page and a timeline called Nikolaas Tinbergen, Life, Work, and Key Figures. So, clearly you're already interested in this guy.
Definitely.
But before we even get to his research, I got to say, I find it kind of wild that before Tinbergen and his colleagues came along, studying animals in their natural habitats, like out in the wild, wasn't even considered, well, serious science.
It's true. Back then, the focus was mainly on lab studies.
Which, I mean, they have their place.
For sure. Lab studies are important, but Tinbergen, he really helped shift that whole paradigm. He argued that to really get animal behavior, you had to observe them in the wild, where their actions actually make sense, like, in the context of survival and reproduction.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So let's go back to the beginning. Who was this Nikolaas Tinbergen? Our timeline mentions he was born in the Netherlands way back in 1907, one of 5 kids. That's a kind of a big family for that time, right?
It was. It was a big family. And it's interesting, because that family dynamic might have actually played a role in his later success. All the Tinbergen children, they're really encouraged to, explore their interests. And Niko, he was fascinated by nature from a really young age. He even set up this little lab in his attic as a teenager.
Wow, a little attic lab.
Yeah. So that early exposure to observation and, just experimenting, it clearly shaped his path.
So he goes on to study biology, but then, bam, World War II happens.
Yeah.
The timeline says he became a prisoner of war.
Right.
Did that experience, did it affect his scientific work at all?
Oh, it definitely had an impact, though not always in a, straightforward way. For example, it actually created some tension with Konrad Lorenz, another founding figure in animal behavior.
Oh, right, Lorenz.
Yeah. And he was also involved in the war, which made things, well, complicated. They did eventually become collaborators and even shared the Nobel Prize. But their relationship was, well, let's just say it was complex.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that scientists are people too,
Yeah.
with all the complexities that come with that.
Absolutely. But putting the war aside, it was after this time that Tinbergen's work really started gaining recognition, right?
Yeah.
He moved to England, taught at Oxford. He even mentored Richard Dawkins, who went on to become, well, a pretty prominent figure in evolutionary biology himself.
That's right. And it was in 1951 that he published his most influential work, The Study of Instinct. This book was a game changer, really shifted the focus to innate behaviors and their evolutionary basis.
Okay, so let's unpack this study of instinct. What was so revolutionary about it?
Well, for one thing, Tinbergen took the existing ideas about instinct, which were pretty basic at the time, and he added this whole new layer of complexity with what he called his hierarchical model.
Hierarchical model. Sounds a bit intimidating.
It does, but it's actually a pretty intuitive way of understanding how instincts are triggered and, how they play out.
Okay, intrigued. Give us the breakdown. How does this hierarchical model work?
Well, imagine like a chain reaction happening in the brain. Let's take the example of a bee searching for nectar. First, they're attracted to a certain color, let's say yellow.
Okay, a yellow flower.
Right. But that's not enough to make them land. There needs to be a second stimulus, like the right scent, to confirm that it's actually a flower and not just, something yellow. Only then does the full feeding instinct kick in and they land to collect the nectar. Each step in this chain reaction releases energy that leads to the next behavior.
So it's not just one stimulus, one response. It's like this whole sequence, these checks and balances happening internally, like an instinctual flow chart.
Exactly. And this model helps explain why animals sometimes exhibit very specific behaviors, even in what seem like unusual circumstances. They're responding to these internal chains of triggers, not just reacting blindly to the environment.
That's fascinating. Starting to see how this hierarchical model really changed how we view animal behavior.
Yeah.
But the study of instinct, that wasn't his only major contribution, right?
Yeah.
What about those famous 4 questions of his? I'm guessing those are pretty important if scientists are still using them today.
Oh, absolutely. The 4 questions, they provide this incredible framework for analyzing any behavior, from, a bird building a nest to, well, you deciding what to have for breakfast.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's hear those questions and see how they apply to, well, everything.
All right. The first question is all about causation. What triggers the behavior in the first place? What are the immediate stimuli or mechanisms involved? Then you have development. How does the behavior change over the animal's lifetime? Does it, mature or need to be learned?
So we're looking at the immediate trigger and then how that behavior plays out over time. What about the bigger picture, though?
That's where the last two questions come in. Function asks, how does this behavior help the animal survive and reproduce? What's its evolutionary advantage? And finally, evolution. How did this behavior come about over generations, and how does it compare to what we see in similar species?
So it's like a multi-layered investigation, right? You're looking at the behavior from all angles, which is probably why it's such a valuable tool for researchers even today.
Exactly. And what's really amazing is that these questions can be applied to human behavior as well. It's all connected. So before we got sidetracked, we were about to dive into Tinbergen's work with those supernormal stimuli, and I think you'll find the specific examples pretty fascinating. He had this real knack for designing these deceptively simple experiments that revealed some really profound insights about animal behavior.
I'm ready. You mentioned he experimented with birds, fish, even butterflies. Let's start with the birds. The timeline mentions his research with herring gulls. What did he do with them?
Well, he was studying how herring gull chicks, they instinctively peck at the red spot on their parents' beaks to stimulate feeding.
Right, to get the parents to regurgitate food.
Exactly. It's a crucial behavior for survival. But Tinbergen, he wanted to know what exactly about that beak were the chicks responding to. Was it the color, the shape, the movement?
So how did he figure that out? Did he start painting gull beaks different colors?
Well, he did something even more clever. He created a series of cardboard models, each with different variations. So some were just plain red, others had spots, some were long and thin, others were short and fat. He basically presented these models to the chicks and recorded which ones they pecked at the most.
So like a multiple choice test for baby birds.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what did he find?
The results were really surprising. The chicks actually pecked most vigorously at a long, thin red stick with 3 white bands near the tip.
Huh.
It wasn't even remotely close to a real gull beak, but it was a supernormal stimulus. It elicited a much stronger response than the actual beak of a parent gull.
So it was like the chicks were responding to like a caricature of a beak, an exaggerated version of the real thing. What does that tell us about their instincts?
Well, it suggests that their pecking behavior isn't just a simple reflex. They're not responding to the beak as a whole, but rather to specific visual cues, like the color red and the contrast of the white bands. Those cues are somehow amplified in the artificial stimulus, triggering an even stronger response.
It makes you wonder if human babies might have similar innate preferences for certain shapes or colors.
That's a great point. It's a question researchers are still exploring today, building on the foundation laid by Tinbergen's work. And this brings us to one of his other famous experiments, the one with the stickleback fish. Remember we talked about them and their aggressive behavior?
Yes. You mentioned that the male sticklebacks attack anything with a red belly, assuming it's a rival, right? How do supernormal stimuli fit into that?
Well, Tinbergen took that observation a step further. He created these wooden models of stickleback fish and painted some realistically, while others had these ridiculously bright, oversized red bellies.
I bet I can guess what happened next. The males went after the super red models like they were the ultimate threat.
You got it. They were completely fooled by the exaggerated stimulus, attacking it far more aggressively than they would even a real male stickleback with a normal red belly. It was like their instinctual programming was saying, the redder the better, it must be a super rival.
Okay, so are you saying that these fish are basically hardwired to respond to certain exaggerated cues? It makes you wonder if humans have similar vulnerabilities. Are there supernormal stimuli in our world that hijack our instincts?
Now, that's a really important question. And it's something Tinbergen himself was actually concerned about. I mean, think about it. We live in a world that's bombarded with advertising, social media, all sorts of stimuli designed to capture our attention. Are those flashy ads and, those clickbait headlines just supernormal stimuli preying on our innate desires for novelty, reward, or even fear?
It's a bit unsettling to think about. We're surrounded by these supersized, brightly colored eggs, but they're not leading us to anything actually beneficial.
Exactly. And this is where Tinbergen's work takes on a whole new level of relevance. It's not just about understanding animal behavior in a vacuum,
Right.
It's about understanding how those same instinctual drives might be playing out in our own lives, shaping our choices and behaviors in ways we don't even realize.
So what can we do about it? I mean, we can't exactly escape the modern world and its constant barrage of stimuli.
Well, that's true. But I think awareness is the first step. By understanding how supernormal stimuli work, we can start to recognize those patterns in our own lives. Maybe we become more critical of advertising or less drawn to those sensational headlines. It's about regaining a sense of agency, of
Uh,
choosing our responses rather than just simply reacting to whatever shiny object is put in front of us.
yeah, I like that. It's empowering, actually. Instead of feeling like we're at the mercy of our instincts, we can learn to like recognize them and make conscious choices.
Exactly. And that brings us back to Tinbergen's 4 questions. Remember how we talked about how they provide a framework for understanding any behavior? Well, those questions can also help us analyze and understand our own responses to the world around us.
Okay, so let's walk through those 4 questions again. But this time, let's apply them to human behavior. How about something everyone can relate to, like scrolling through social media?
Perfect example. Let's start with causation. What triggers that behavior in the first place? Maybe you're bored, maybe you're seeking connection, or maybe you're just habituated to checking your phone every few minutes.
So it's about identifying those immediate triggers, the whys behind the scroll. Then what about development? How does that behavior change over time?
Think about how your social media use has evolved since you first started using it. Maybe you were initially drawn to the novelty, but now it's become more of a habit, or maybe you've become more selective in what you engage with.
I know I've definitely gone through phases with social media. Okay, so we've got the triggers and how the behavior evolves. What about the bigger picture? What's the function of this behavior?
That's where things get really interesting. Does scrolling through social media help you connect with friends and family? Does it provide you with valuable information? Or is it primarily a distraction, a way to avoid boredom or uncomfortable emotions? This question really gets to the heart of whether the behavior is ultimately beneficial or detrimental.
Yeah, it's like holding a mirror up to yourself and asking, is this really serving me? And then finally, the evolution question. How did this behavior come about? I mean, social media is a relatively new phenomenon, right?
It is, but we can still look at it through an evolutionary lens. Our brains evolved in a world where social connection was crucial for survival. So it makes sense that we'd be drawn to technologies that promise to enhance those connections, even if they sometimes come with unintended consequences.
Yeah, like our ancient brains trying to adapt to this modern digital world. Fascinating.
It really is. And by applying Tinbergen's 4 questions to behaviors like social media use, we can start to unpack those complexities and make more informed choices about how we interact with the world around us.
I'm already feeling like I'm seeing things from a whole new perspective. But, we've talked a lot about Tinbergen's research, but he was also a person with a life outside the lab. What was he like on a personal level?
Well, he was known for being incredibly passionate about his work, almost childlike in his enthusiasm for observing animals. But he also had a more introspective side. The timeline mentions that he struggled with depression later in life, especially after his brother's suicide. It's a reminder that even brilliant minds can be touched by tragedy and hardship.
Makes him seem more, more human, more relatable. It's important to remember that scientists are people too, with their own struggles and complexities.
Absolutely. And it's also worth noting that Tinbergen's work with autistic children, though controversial, it stemmed from a genuine desire to apply his knowledge to helping others.
Yes, I remember reading about that. It's a complicated part of his legacy and perhaps one we should explore in more depth at all time.
I agree. It's a reminder that science is an ongoing process, and even brilliant minds can make missteps. But even with those complexities, Tinbergen's contributions to the field of animal behavior, they remain undeniable. His work continues to inspire researchers today, and his 4 questions are a real testament to his enduring legacy.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface, but in a good way.
Yeah.
It's definitely left me wanting to learn more. What other fascinating tidbits can you share about Tinbergen's life and work?
Well, one thing I always find interesting is his collaboration with filmmaker Hugh Falkus. Tinbergen, he really recognized the power of visual storytelling to communicate scientific ideas to a wider audience. Together, they produced a series of award-winning wildlife films, bringing Tinbergen's research to life for millions of viewers.
Wow, that's amazing. So he wasn't just a brilliant scientist, but also a gifted communicator. It's like a precursor to all the amazing nature documentaries we have today.
Exactly. He understood that science wasn't just about publishing papers in academic journals. It was about sharing the wonder of the natural world with everyone.
And that's a beautiful sentiment to carry forward. Speaking of sharing wonder, are there any specific examples of Tinbergen's research that really highlight his ingenuity and his passion for understanding animal behavior? I'd love to hear about some of his most groundbreaking experiments.
Yeah, so those digger wasps. Really fascinating stuff. This is one of those classic examples that really shows how Tinbergen, he combined this careful observation with clever experimental design. He was really fascinated by how those female digger wasps, how they managed to locate their burrows after, being away foraging for food.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think they'd just rely on scent, right? But it sounds like he discovered something a lot more interesting going on.
Exactly, exactly. He noticed that when a wasp left its burrow, it would actually do this little orientation flight, like circling the area, almost as if it was, memorizing the landmarks around the entrance.
So like pine cones, pebbles, things like that.
Exactly, exactly. And to test his theory, you know what he did? He'd subtly move those landmarks while the wasp was away.
Oh, wow. Sneaky.
And when the wasp returned, instead of going straight to the burrow, it would go to the center of those rearranged landmarks, even though the burrow itself was in a different spot.
So they weren't just following a scent trail or relying on some, internal compass. They were creating these mental maps of their surroundings. That's incredible.
It really is. And this is where those 4 questions, remember those, they come in so beautifully. We apply them to this wasp behavior, and we can see how Tinbergen used them to understand it from all angles.
Okay, let's do it. Causation.
Hmm?
What's triggering the wasp to return to its burrow? We know it's not just scent.
Right. The trigger seems to be that visual recognition at the landmark arrangement, like a mental snapshot, they've taken of their home's location.
Then there's development. Do young wasps just automatically know how to do this, or is it something they have to learn?
That's a great question. And Tinbergen's research suggested that it's a combination of both. That basic ability to memorize landmarks, it seems to be innate. But young wasps still need some experience to really, fine-tune their navigational skills.
So it's nature and nurture working together,
Mhm.
as with so many behaviors. Okay, what about function? Why is this landmark navigation so crucial, so important for the wasp's survival?
Well, think about it. If a female wasp can't reliably find her burrow, she can't protect her offspring.
Hmm.
Being able to accurately navigate back and forth, from her hunting grounds to her nest, it's crucial for reproductive success.
Makes total sense. And finally, evolution. How did this incredible navigational ability, how did it even come about in the first place?
Well, it's likely that, over generations, those wasps that were better at memorizing landmarks, they were just more successful at raising offspring, and so those genes would get passed down. Natural selection at work, shaping even these complex cognitive abilities.
It's mind-blowing to think about how these seemingly simple creatures are capable of such sophisticated behaviors. It really makes you appreciate the diversity and wonder of the natural world.
Exactly. And that's what Tinbergen was all about. Opening our eyes to the marvels of animal behavior and using that knowledge to better understand ourselves and our place in the world.
His work is a powerful reminder that science isn't just about, cold, hard facts. It's about curiosity, observation, and a genuine passion for uncovering the mysteries of life.
Well said. And his legacy continues to inspire generations of scientists to explore the world with that same sense of wonder.
This has been such an enlightening deep dive. Thank you for sharing your expertise and for helping us appreciate the profound impact of Nikolaas Tinbergen's work. I think I can speak for both of us when I say that we'll never look at a bird, a fish, or even a wasp the same way again.
It's been my pleasure. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep that scientific curiosity alive.